This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, it's Thursday, our favorite time of the week. Here we are once again with the founder of the largest online progressive community, DailyKos, the founder of Civiqs with a Q, the most accurate polling firm we know of, and of course the host of The Brief, the new podcast and YouTube show, which is the most popular new podcast and YouTube show in the world. We are here now with Markos. See, you keep saying it, people believe it, so it just becomes self-fulfilling prophecy.
This is very P.T. Barnum of you.
Markos Moulitsas join us. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. Always good to have you. So, Tulsa, Joe Biden speaks. Many people are giving him very positive marks for his speech on race. He called out Joe Manchin. I think that the clock is ticking on Joe Manchin. That is, people are like, dude, you're gonna have to do something here. So what are your thoughts about that and where that is? Because we still got to deal with the filibuster. We still got to deal with voting rights, and these are existential issues for everything you and I and those who listen to us, Markos, and follow us and agree with us. These are existential issues for progressives, for Americans, for everybody.
Yeah, the problem is that Joe Manchin is just not a progressive, and I'm not. You know me. I'm not a reflexive anti-Manchin person. I recognize the difficulty he is in representing a state that voted for Trump by 40 points. We have no business having a Senate seat in West Virginia, and without Joe Manchin, we wouldn't have anything that we've had, which has been actually quite substantial in a 50-50 Senate, right? So I am somewhat more sympathetic to Manchin than your typical progressive. That said, Joe Manchin's not a progressive. I mean, he is basically a pro-education, pro-labor conservative. And in a world where all these voting restrictions cost Democrats the majority, there's nothing stopping Manchin from switching parties to continue to be, have power if that's what he wants. Republicans would take him in a heartbeat, and ideologically, he would fit. He'd be more pro-labor than your typical Republican. They can handle that. So he's in a pretty secure position, and making arguments on behalf of the party, I think, don't really land very strongly to him. I would think Kyrsten Sinema, who's I think just a wreck, I think she would be more susceptible to that because she's going to face a primary challenge when she's up for re-election in when is it? In 4 years, unfortunately. Not this year, the next cycle. So she might be more open to being pressured in that way. But Manchin, he's actually in a pretty good place, unfortunately, from our ability to influence him. And my hope has always been that he saw himself as this is his last term, and so you only live once, and he could vote more freely in support of progressive issues. But I mean, he's not acting that way now, so I don't know if my hope is bearing itself out. I think he's behaving as though he still is going to keep running, and as long as that's the case, he has very little incentive to help Democrats. It's a 40-point Trump state.
What about the January 6th commission and what happens with that? Is that dead in the water? Should congressional House Democrats just go ahead and have their own January 6th commission and committee? What do you think about that?
That's where Nancy Pelosi seems to be headed. What I would like to see, if I could, the problem is subpoena power, right? So you can't create an outside commission that has subpoena power without the vote granting that subpoena power. So that's pretty dead. Republicans don't want to see that happen. Because that ideally would be great is if Democrats set up a outside commission that included 50% Republicans, but there are Republicans who believe in democracy and have been outspoken about it. And you can stock this committee with that kind of Republican. I'm talking like the William Crystal types, right? People who otherwise were like, those people are horrible. But they are interested in finding out what happened on January 6th because they do care about democracy. They do believe in the ballot box deciding the direction of the country. That's not possible, though. So the other two options are either a select committee of Congress, and the problem with that, I mean, the good thing about it is that the Democrats would control all the subpoenas and who to call and witnesses and that sort of thing. The downside is that that the Republican side would be stocked with Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, and it'd be all the Trump lick spittles, and so it'd just be a circus because that crowd would be fully vested in making it as ridiculous as absolutely possible. So the final option is that the Justice Department actually appoint a special prosecutor type of situation that they can, and I think they can actually do a panel that can then look into and do a full investigation into the origins of January 6th. And that may be, if we're actually interested in justice as opposed to making a big public spectacle out of it, that's probably the best option.
So Merrick Garland could do that.
Yes.
And that makes sense. I would hope that neither Justice or Biden would feel that would be politicizing it. I mean, we know Republicans would politicize it. They say, oh, this is the president's administration. Because they think that the Justice Department serves at the beck and call of the president. That's what they think.
Yeah, they project, right?
Yeah. So you saying the Justice Department to do it, I mean, is legitimate. They would say, oh, no, but this is Biden doing it. I just hope that would not scare away Garland. I mean,
either way, they're going to claim it's all a big partisan project. But, I mean, Garland could nominate a Republican, a prominent ex-senator type of Republican to head the inquiry. And Republicans will still claim it's partisan. But at this point, the modern elected Republican Party's definition of partisanship is anti-Trump. It's not left, right. There's no ideology, right? I mean, the Republican Party has utterly, completely, and 100% surrendered any notion that they stand for anything beyond tax cuts for billionaires. There is no ideology. So it's all about Donald Trump. You just had today, the chair of the Republican National Committee sent a letter to the debate commission demanding all these changes. Otherwise, Republicans wouldn't partake in future debates. If you look at that list, it's a list of Trump grievances. It's got nothing to do with the Republican Party. It's got nothing to do with. It's about making Trump feel that his grievances are still being addressed. And I think Trump is feeling pretty raw this week since they canceled his blog. He canceled himself, and because it was too embarrassingly irrelevant for him to handle. So I think he's feeling a little raw. So Republicans are going to have to kiss his ring extra much, kiss his butt extra much. There you go, extra this week to make him feel better.
Those of you who have blogs have something Donald Trump cannot have. So be proud of yourself today. All right. He does not have a blog. It's failed. I mean, he
lost again.
He lost again. That's what he did. Loser. He's a loser. And hopefully he'll be more of a loser. I'm traveling this week. In fact, folks, I'm talking to Markos today from Charlotte, North Carolina. Not for anything political. Actually here to drop my son off at his collegiate summer baseball camp. And it's always good to get out of your own locale, comfort zone, fishbowl, whatever you call it, and just talk to the people in other places. And people have been saying to me, man, we love your attorney general and your Manhattan DA. That's what some people said to me last night. I said, really? They said, yeah, they're gonna do it. We're so glad they're doing it. I'm glad they were patient, Mark, and got it together and are now, got the criminal charges. I mean, so it's and I didn't bring it up. People just, it was, where are you from? New York. Oh, we love your. So I was like, wow, this is really interesting. This is what people are talking about. Yeah. And so people feeling that, Markos, they're looking forward to it.
I've always said that there's careers to be made if you're the person that brings down Donald Trump, right? These are future senators and presidents that are being minted. if you can be that national hero
Right.
who finally brings down Donald Trump. My one caution is that we've gotten our hopes up so many times, right? About these investigations.
Right.
Fitzgerald's investigation way back in the Bush days, and what was the recent one where they refused to Mueller? Yeah, the Mueller investigation, right?
Right.
Like, so many people have had the goods, and they just, for any number of reasons, can't or will not close the deal. And so I'm tired of getting my hopes up way too much. That said, things seem to be progressing very nicely. And remember, Trump has got, I think, 22 lawsuits is the number, like serious lawsuits that he's facing. And yeah, maybe half of them fail outright, but that's a lot of avenues to potentially take him down. And it's chipping away. It's just chipping away at his armor. And now that they have his tax returns, we know, obviously he's been lying and inflating the value of his properties and lying in all sorts of financial crimes. And there's a reason that only Deutsche Bank would ever do business with him. And all the other banks were like, we're not going to touch him. And the goods are there. The question is, are they going to be enough to take Trump down himself and not maybe, the CEO of Trump Co. Like, let's see if it actually gets to, and we know that Trump is very good at sending marching orders without actually saying explicitly what he wants done, right? The wink and nod.
Right.
And
right.
how do you legally prove when he says get it done, he meant do X, Y, Z, as opposed to please lawfully file the taxes to the best of your ability, Your Honor. That's what I meant when I said get it done, and not inflate my assets, make me more money. Who cares about the law or the IRS? So that's a challenge that prosecutors are going to have to find is they're going to have to be able to make that direct connection between the actions of the officers who carried out those illegal acts and Trump himself ordering those. And it's actually harder than one would think. Legally.
More MIP after this message. Well, couldn't they just do what prosecutors have done with the mob and racketeering? Because that's how orders are given that way. Make this happen, or let's get rid of this person. What did Michael Corleone say? What did he say about Fredo? As long as our mother is alive, I don't want anything to happen to Fredo. Yeah. so by omission, so I would hope they would be able to deal with it that way. But Marcus, I want to go back a minute because you did mention cinema. Let's go back to Arizona for a minute. Katie Hobbs announced she's going to run for governor of Arizona. You think she has a shot?
Absolutely. Everybody has a shot in Arizona. It's a 50-50 state now. This is one of those states where, and Katie Hobbs is obviously she's a progressive hero and champion. So I think I'd be shocked if she doesn't clear the field, which will make it easier for her. And she's already won statewide. And in fact, I believe she is the only statewide elected official right now. Yeah, that's right. Obviously, we picked up 2 Senate seats, but all those Senate races were tight. They were all within 3 points. Katie Hobbs won by 1 point, 1.5 points. The governor won by like 3 points. The Republican governor, Ducey, won by like 3 points. This is a state that is on the edge, and it's really going to come out to who turns out, who votes. And it's the ages-old problem that we're always going to have, right? It's do we get our core constituencies, which are lower-performing voting demographics, do we get them to the polls? That's going to be the big question. Right now, I'm feeling more optimistic than maybe I should, given history. We just had a special election in New Mexico on Tuesday for Deb Haaland's seat. She is now Interior Secretary. And the Democratic candidate outperformed Joe Biden, actually did better. And in the Albuquerque, it was in New Mexico, in the Albuquerque suburbs, the Democratic margin actually increased by a couple points. So the suburbs, at least at this point, are not snapping back to the Republicans. Democratic engagement hasn't fallen. And this is a middle of end of March, beginning of June special election where nobody's paying attention. Our turnout was solid. This comes in the heels of our Georgia special, runoff Senate election victories with Warnock and Ossoff. So I'm still feeling confident that our side is engaged and activated. Where everybody talks about having drop-off is donors. And I'm not talking about small dollar donors. I'm talking about the big millionaire donors. They've seemed to have cooled right now on the organizations doing the hard work on the ground. And this is so incredibly frustrating because I don't know how you look at the current playing field and the Republican assault on democracy and think, yeah, you know what? I'm going to sit this out. I'm good. We got rid of Trump. We won. Like, there's nothing about the current state of this country that says anybody has won. It is literally on the brink. It could fall either way. It could fall into totalitarianism, fascism, which is where Republicans want to take it, or it can usher in a new era of progressive governance, which is where we want to take it. And anybody that's not fully engaged right now, that has been part of this fight, really, there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, right. Right. This is important, and we're seeing a voter suppression everywhere. If you don't see the urgency of being involved now, what are you doing? Had Ari Berman on the show recently, and 2021 alone, 400 voter suppression bills across the states. 400 had over 400, I should say. Had Latasha Brown on Black Voters Matter, and she talked about what you're talking about, making sure that see, this is the critical moment we have, folks. Making all of these elections, even the special ones, urgent, must-vote elections, making active vigilance at the voting booth second nature. So that's been the problem. Getting people interested in all the races, not just the presidential race on the ballot, and doing that every time. And that's the only shot we have, I would think, Markos, of coming close to beating the precedent of the incumbent party losing seats next year in a midterm. If we do nationally what we did in Georgia, we might change that history. Now you say, some people say that's impossible. Well, hold on. Every cycle in Virginia, it was seesaw, Republican, Democrat, Republican. We stopped that. Nobody said that would ever happen. Literally stopped it. Now there have been I think 3, maybe 4 Democrats elected governor of Virginia, a state where you can't succeed yourself, in succession. Democrat. I remember it wasn't even 10 years ago. No, I'd say 20 years ago. It was the same thing. Virginia's going to flip this year because that's what Virginia always does. Virginia is now as blue can be. Mm-hmm. And if we keep plugging at this, second nature, what we saw, you remember the euphoria of November, you remember the euphoria of January. Just imagine feeling that every cycle around.
Why wouldn't we want that?
It's good.
Every time. So the danger that we have right now is existential. And it used to be existential for liberalism. Like, they want to extinguish liberalism. This is worse now. This is existential to our democracy. Republican Party has surrendered trying to win on ideology. They've stopped trying to win any arguments on policy. And Mark, you probably remember Republicans walked around saying, like, this is a center-right country. Like, that was the thing. This is a center-right country. They were full of crap, but at least they pretended that this was a conservative country and that they were fighting to win people's hearts and minds. When's the last time you heard a Republican say this is a center-right country? Like, I can't even remember. It's before Trump times. Like, certainly not since Trump. Nobody's arguing this is a center-right country, and they're not even trying to win argument. So what happens when you have a party that is not interested in winning hearts and minds, but doesn't want to give up power? That's the situation we're in right now. That's why we have voter suppression. That's why we have the lies and the conspiracies and the efforts to overturn elections. And not even voter suppression, that's part of it. But in Georgia, they took away the Secretary of State's power to manage recounts and gave that to the legislature. They're trying to do that in Arizona to Katie Hobbs. They're trying to do that in Texas. And Texas is interesting because Texas is still a Republican state. So what does that say? Trump won it by 6 points. What does that say about Texas Republicans that they're so terrified of the black vote and the urban white vote that they're working to suppress it while they're still winning the state by 6 points.
Yeah, and it shows the threat of that vote too, and how they feel through it. But I would add to that, existential not only to our democracy, but to the way the government and the democracy even functions. Because what they do, folks, they suppress the vote, but then they get elected to sabotage the actual function of government and commerce. Because its goal is to stop the wheels of function from grinding, to literally stop things. They don't want anything to happen. They don't want government to function. They don't want it to do anything. And that's sort of the libertarian bent that exists. But it's extreme on their part. We don't want anything to come out of this process. We just want to get a check for being a member of Congress.
If your argument is that government doesn't work, then how can you run a government that works? I mean, it would be self-invalidating. The problem is that the anti-government argument isn't working for them anymore. And Trump made a mockery out of it, right? He increased the deficit the debt by $8 trillion in 4 years. And he was happy to use government to meddle in, the Justice Department and elsewhere. And so he basically came in, and since he's not ideologically conservative, Trump is his own, brand of crazy. There's no ideological underpinnings or moorings there. And the Republican Party just surrendered to that, that's the part that I still blows my mind, that they surrendered to somebody who made such a mockery of what they supposedly believed in, that it sort of has undermined the entire party. And so they've lost young voters. They've lost a generation, an entire two generations at this point. They've lost millennials and the Zoomers. They've lost college educated suburban women, and they're not really trying to win them back. I think they even lost some ground on some suburban educated men, although not as much. They've definitely lost urban areas. So what's left? They've got old white people in rural areas, and they're dying off. And they look over to the cities and they look at the suburbs and they say, what we would need to do to win those people back would cost us with these old rural men. And yeah, they're dying off, but they deliver a lot of pain if we were to abandon our conspiracy theories. And we don't want to be out in the wilderness for a couple of cycles. And the sad reality is that there's enough of that Trump crowd that they are competitive at this time. Demographically, over time, it's a problem for them, but at least short term. And this is why they're so hell-bent on institutionally undermining our democracy, because they know they can't survive the demographic shifts of this country. So this is for them, it's existential. We look at democracy as existential because we value democracy. They see democracy as the threat.
To them. Democracy itself as it exists.
Yeah.
More MIP after this message. Let's do this before we go. Now, because this is another area I think it's important people would want to hear from you on. You, on the brief this week, also talked about candidate recruitment. That's important too, because we got to get the vote out. We have to vote, folks. But it's always good when they're good candidates. So talk to us a little bit about that, how you think that's headed. And if you don't mind, maybe educate the public a little bit too about the way candidate recruitment even works.
Right. So historically, candidates, not just Democratic candidates, all candidates were basically, they look the same. They were white men, mostly lawyers, predominantly prosecutors, and people of money. So political dynasties or, wealthy people, because running for office is incredibly complicated. And so we had Amanda Littman on the brief this week. She is the co-founder of Run for Something, and she's a powerhouse. She's unbelievable. And Run for Something, if you're interested in running at this is for local level offices, not for federal, but state legislature to mosquito abatement board, city council. Run for Something. Run for Something will basically hold your hand and walk you through the process. And we had Amanda. I said, so what does somebody have to do when they run for office? And Mark, I don't even remember that list was so long. But it's you have to write a campaign plan. You have to file the paperwork. You have to open the bank account. You have to hire this kind of staff. The list was endless. And so no wonder we couldn't get candidates that looked like America to run because it was so complicated. And its system, I'm convinced, is designed to be complicated to keep people from running. It protected that white male class from having to deal with actual competition electorally. So Run for Something shows up, and that most of their candidates are women. They're like 40% people of color. They're like 25% LGBTQ. They really helped democratize. And when you look at the rise of the Democratic Party during the Trump resistance, the superstars are people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Pressley and people like that are not traditional candidates. Latina, Black women, trans women, these are not the kind of candidates that ever ran because it was too complicated. So now you have an organization like Run for Something that literally holds people's hands and teaches them the mechanics of running for office. Now, once they've run for office, now they know how to do it. And, if they move up the ranks, they can take care of themselves. So Run for Something is really designed for first-time candidates that are on the ground floor. This is like a legitimately grassroots. And they're winning races that people didn't think could be won because nobody ever bothered running candidates. And what's amazing, Mark, is that, and we're seeing this in I think we've even talked about this, the Houston DA's race, right?
Houston DA's race. I need to refresh myself. Hold it.
But she helped increase voter turnout in Houston because it wasn't the top of the ticket. It was it's coming in and saying it's people on the ground that can make a difference to your life every single day. And these are people that look like you, they talk like you, they know what your life looks like. And then that helps bring new people into the voting process in a way that Joe Biden wouldn't be able to do so in a typical election year.
Was that Kim Ogg? Is that who that was?
I can't remember.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. That's fine.
But I mean, the point is run people at the local level that look like their communities.
That's right.
And it suddenly changes things. And I actually think Raphael Warnock is a perfect example. And John Ossoff. John Ossoff is 34, right? He's the youngest senator in, 50, 60 years. Somebody who looks young and can speak and project in a way that resonates with youth.
Right.
And Raphael Warnock, which obviously he's Black and speaks and resonates with one of the largest Black communities in the country, in Georgia. That was a dynamite 1-2 punch, right? To carry into that runoff. And I think we benefited from both of them making it to the runoff because had one of them won outright, might have been a problem.
Yeah.
But by both of them running as a ticket and appealing to the broad swath of the voting public, it was really, really beneficial. So, and this is honestly it's one of the big reasons I was not for Joe Biden in the primary because he's not representative of the party or at this point of the country itself. It actually worked out.
You did.
And we've talked about how it's actually worked out even more fantastically than anybody could have imagined because Republicans don't know how to run against white people anymore. Joe Biden flummoxes them.
Yeah.
But at the lower levels, it's having a elected officials that represent and look like our communities, look like our what America looks like, makes us stronger as a party, means we have better governance and pulls new people into the system. And so if you're interested in running, runforsomething.org, I believe, runforsomething.org. And they will hold your hand and walk you through the whole process of becoming a candidate. And they're democratizing politics, which is funny because you think, politics is democracy. No. The system used to exclude people that didn't have the money, that didn't have the power, that didn't have the know-how. And Run for Something has now created that allowed for people to have that knowledge. And so anybody can run for office. It's not easy. Right. But you finally have somebody that will hold your hand if you're wanting to do so.
And it's very important. We've not had organizations like that before. And in the past, it was daunting and intimidating. And I'm sure they also are helpful. Organizations like Run for Something, I'm sure, are also helpful with this. A lot of people don't have the stomach or the fortitude for the dirtiness that comes in politics. And so you've got to, but folks, we have to do it. I mean, that's the only way everything's going to change. That's the only way we're going to get anywhere. Now, it was Markos this time who said, in the past, candidates all look the same. He said that I didn't. When I say that, last time I said that, I got in trouble.
It's objective.
Mark Mark is racist against candidates because he said they all look alike.
I still can't tell Republicans apart,
right?
Because they haven't democratized their system.
And then I said other things to get myself in trouble, like same old white males need not apply. Wonder Bread. I'm calling Joe Biden Wonder Bread, but Wonder Bread is working right now. That works. But this might be the last Wonder Bread. If things go the way they're supposed to go, candidates will look more like communities in America. And so Wonder Bread is going by the wayside. So, Joe does what he does, and that's good. I said that's going to be the last time since you brought up, because it's just on my mind for some reason. Where are you now on whether Joe Biden himself can or should run again?
I mean, he's going to run again. Why wouldn't he run again? I mean, he's having a fantastically successful presidency.
You don't think age is a factor?
He seems sprightly and with it to me. I mean, age might be a factor. I mean, he might have a stroke in a year or two, God forbid, right? So we don't know what the future holds. Right now, he seems incredibly healthy and agile and engaged, and he's having an incredibly successful presidency. And I don't see any appetite right now anywhere for anything different. I see appetite for getting a bigger Senate majority so we don't have to deal with Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema every freaking day, right? That appetite I see. But it's very clear right now that if Congress were to pass the kind of legislation that we're all agitating for, Joe Biden's going to sign it. We've had administration in the past that have sort of like, Obama, we were all trying to talk about public option and Obama's like undermining us. Joe Biden ain't doing that. He's not undermining anybody. I mean, he's talking about, what we need to do on voting rights, on DC statehood, on labor. I mean, it's almost creepy.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. We were geared up to fight the Biden administration the way we did the Obama administration, just like pulling teeth, trying to get them to do anything. And it's not what's happening.
No.
He's doing all the right things.
No, you're right. We were not expecting this at all. So no, it is a good thing. And it is actually kind of surprising, but pleasant,
I'm not complaining.
No, we're not complaining. Like the song, tell me am I dreaming, or if I'm dreaming, pinch me to see if it's real, because my mind can't decide,
Right.
I don't, because we'll see something come across and say, he said what? He did what? And then you go verify. You don't believe it. You're all in that position and you go verify. He didn't do that. This is going to make sure.
He took a shot at Sinema and Manchin.
That's right.
I mean, what? It's
right.
Like, get out of my head, Joe. Stop doing the things I would do.
Right. That's right. And so, no, that's all good. So we shall see, folks. Check out the brief every Tuesday, 1:30 Pacific. Right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. 1:30 Pacific. And then it's also, shows up as a podcast the next day.
Yeah.
Continue to support
DailyKos, the brief, and all your favorite podcast platforms.
So we are doing it all. Markos Moulitsas with us for Thursday Coast. Thank you, Markos.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. And I'm so excited about this return to normalcy. Not having to wear a mask everywhere. And
yeah, it's beautiful.
Weather's
safe. Nice. People getting outside. Yeah. Wonderful.
So good. So enjoy.
Yep. All right. Thank you, man. Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. Please remember to listen, like, and wherever you get your podcasts, please give the show a 5-star rating. And please do spread the word. Let's all continue to pray for each other during this pandemic and this police-demic. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.